The stars stretched like a vast, indifferent tapestry above the colony ship Endeavor, its hull groaning faintly against the void. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles paling from hours of unrelenting tension. She was built for the long haul, stocky, with calloused hands from years on Earth's roughneck rigs, and a gaze that could pin a crewman faster than a laser sight. Beside her, Engineer Raj Patel hunched over a flickering console, his fingers dancing across holographic readouts. Raj was the cautious one, always double-checking seals and venting excess optimism before it built to pressure. "Captain," he said, voice steady but laced with fatigue, "the delegation's shuttle is docking. Sensors show 5 life signs, 3 Zalari, 2 aids. No weapons detected, but you know how they camouflage tech." Elena nodded, straightening her uniform. The Zalari had appeared unannounced 3 cycles ago, their sleek vessel materializing from hyperspace like a ghost in the nebula. They called themselves emissaries of the Concordance, a sprawling alliance of species claiming stewardship over half the galaxy. Humanity's first deep space push had brushed their borders, and now they were here to discuss terms. Turned away at every diplomatic channel on the outer colonies, they'd come straight to the Endeavor, humanity's farthest flung hope. Elena's orders from command were clear, polite but firm. No concessions. The crew, 200 souls including scientists, miners, and families, depended on this ship pushing onward to Epsilon Eridani, not bending to alien ultimatums. The airlock cycled with a hiss, and the delegation entered the bridge. Leading them was Ambassador Creve, a towering Zalari with iridescent scales shifting like oil on water, his 4 arms folded in their neutral pose. Flanking him were 2 subordinates, their eyes multifaceted and unblinking, and the aides, smaller, furred beings from some client race, carrying data slates that hummed softly. "Captain Vasquez," Creve intoned, his voice a resonant chime translated flawlessly by the ship's AI. "We come in peace to extend the Concordance's welcome. Your species shows promise, but expansion without guidance invites peril. Join us and thrive under our protection." Elena stood, meeting his gaze without flinching. The bridge crew, Raj at engineering, Dr. Lena Korsakov at medical ops, her sharp wit hidden behind quiet focus, watched in silence. Lena was the third pillar here, a xenobiologist with a knack for cutting through bullshit, her lean frame coiled like a spring. "Ambassador," Elena replied, tone even, "we appreciate the offer. Humanity's been charting its own course for millennia. We're grateful for the invitation but we'll decline. Our path leads to new worlds on our terms." Creve's scales rippled, a subtle darkening that Raj noted on his cultural database overlay. "Refusal carries consequences, Captain. The nebula ahead, the Veil of Thorns, is no place for unallied vessels. Anomalies there have claimed greater fleets. Our archives hold the keys to safe passage. Without them..." Raj leaned in, murmuring to Elena through the comms implant. "He's not bluffing. Scans show the veils laced with gravitic distortions. Our shields might hold, but it's a gamble." Elena waved him off subtly, eyes locked on Creve. The ambassador's words hung in the air, a veiled threat wrapped in benevolence. The crew exchanged glances. The Endeavor was built tough, but the cosmos didn't care about human grit alone. As the delegation departed, their shuttle detaching with cold efficiency, Elena turned to her team. "Raj, plot a course through the Veil's edge, slow and steady. Lena, prep the labs for anomaly analysis. We're not turning back." The ship hummed to life, thrusters firing in precise bursts. But as the nebula loomed on the view screen, a swirling mass of purple storms and jagged energy spikes, Elena felt the first twinge of doubt. The Zalari's place for humanity was a cage. They just kicked the door shut behind them. Captain Ilera Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the Endeavor's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the alien delegation's shuttle docking, its sleek, iridescent hull contrasting sharply against the scarred bulkheads of her ship. She'd seen plenty of wonders in her 30 years captaining frontier runs. Nebula storms that painted the void in electric blues, derelict stations whispering ghosts of forgotten colonies, but nothing quite like the Vexery. Their envoy, Thaler, had requested this parley in the neutral drift between systems, promising enlightenment for humanity's nascent fleet. Elara didn't trust promises wrapped in holograms. Beside her, Dr. Kai Ren adjusted his glasses, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the console. Cautious to a fault, Kai had pored over every scrap of intel on the Vexery, a nomadic empire spanning a dozen stars, masters of quantum drives but notorious for absorbing weaker cultures into their collective harmony. "They're not here for tea, Captain," he murmured, his voice steady but edged with the wariness of a man who'd once lost a research outpost to corporate raiders. "Their scans lit us up like a Christmas tree on approach. They're probing for weaknesses." Elara nodded, her jaw set. Brave didn't mean reckless. She'd earned her scars navigating asteroid fields solo after her first crew bailed during a solar flare. "Let them probe. We're not some backwater hauler they can hitch a ride on." She glanced at Mira, the wiry engineer lounging against the bulkhead, tools jangling from her belt. Myra's wit was her weapon, sharp as the plasma cutter she favored. "You got those surprises ready in the bays?" Mira grinned, pushing off the wall with a casual flick of her wrist. "Oh yeah. If they twitch wrong, their fancy shuttle's getting a face full of EMP chaff. Humanity's ingenuity, remember? We don't need their enlightenment to keep the lights on." Her eyes sparkled with that defiant spark, the kind that had jury-rigged the Endeavor's shields during the Kale Drift blockade, turning a scrap heap into a fortress. The airlock hissed open, admitting Thaler and two aides, tall ethereal figures with skin like polished obsidian and eyes glowing faint violet. The Vexery moved with unnatural grace as if gravity bowed to them, but Elara caught the subtle scan pulses from their wrist devices, mapping her bridge like cartographers on a new world. Thaler inclined his head, mandibles clicking in what their translators rendered as a greeting. "Captain Voss, honored conduits of the human expanse. We come bearing the weave of stars, an offer to integrate your vessels into our grand lattice." Elara stood, meeting those luminous eyes without flinching. The bridge air grew thick, recyclers straining against the faint, ozone tang of their suits. "Flattery's a long way from home, Ambassador. We've managed our expanse just fine without your lattice. What do you really want?" Thaler's aides shifted, a ripple of tension in their poised forms, but he pressed on, projecting a hologram, swirling maps of trade routes, resource nodes blooming like flowers across the galaxy. "Your kind scatters seeds in the void, brave yes but isolated. Join us and harvest the cosmos. Refuse and the shadows between stars grow long." Kai leaned forward, his voice cutting through like a scalpel. "Shadows? That's code for the pirate clans you've been herding our way, isn't it? Testing our defenses." He wasn't one for bluster, but facts were his armor, and he'd cross-referenced the Vexery's aid convoys with the uptick in raids on human outposts. Mira snorted, crossing her arms. "Yeah, integrate or get integrated. Seen that play before. Last time we turned a gift drone into a minefield. Worked wonders." Thaler's glow dimmed fractionally, a flicker Elara noted like a predator spotting a limp. The offer was a velvet glove over an iron fist, access to their tech in exchange for docking rights, data shares, and who knew what else. But humanity had clawed its way from Earth's cradle without beggars' bowls. They'd forged alloys from meteor iron, coded AIs from scratch. No alien lattice would clip their wings. "Appreciate the map," Elara said finally, her tone even, like plotting a course through turbulence. "But we're charting our own. Transmit your proposal formally. We'll review it." It was a dismissal, polite but firm, the kind that had sent scavengers packing from her hull before. As the Vexery withdrew, their shuttle detaching with a soft thruster bloom against the stars, Kai exhaled. "That went better than expected. But they're not done. Look." He pointed to the sensor feed, 3 more Vexery signatures emerging from hyperspace, escorts closing the drift like a noose. Mira was already at her station, fingers flying. "Resource shortage incoming. They're blockading the helium-3 lane. Our tanks are at half. Without it, we're dead in the water in a week." Elara's grip tightened. The challenge wasn't abstract anymore. The void's cold calculus demanded fuel, and the Vexery held the keys. But turning away meant fighting for every drop, wits against their swarm. She straightened, resolve hardening like quenched steel. Then we adapt. Kai, plot alternatives. Mira, prep the decoys. They think we're seeds? Let's show them how humans grow thorns. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the faint hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the debris field ahead, a graveyard of shattered hulls from the last skirmish with the Krell swarm. Her crew, down to just 3 now after the ambush at the outer rim, watched in tense silence. Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual grease streak on his cheek, hunched over his console, fingers dancing across the patched-together controls. Beside him, Lena, the sharp-eyed navigator whose caution had saved them more than once, traced the erratic paths of the incoming drones. "They're adapting," Lena said, her voice steady but edged with frustration. The Krell weren't sentient in the way the galaxy understood it, just relentless biomachines, evolved from some forgotten warlord's folly, now infesting the trade lanes like cosmic vermin. But they learned fast, their swarms shifting patterns after every encounter. The Council had dismissed humanity's plea for aid weeks ago, calling their colony ships primitive intruders, unworthy of the core world's protection. Turned away at the gates of the Alliance, Ilara's vessel, the Endeavor, was on its own, scavenging for a way home through this hell. Jax wiped sweat from his brow. Shields at 40%. If we punch through the field, we might lose the port nacelle. He glanced at Ilara, his usual wit subdued by the weight of it all. No quips today, the stakes were too raw. Losing the nacelle meant drifting, easy prey for the swarm that had already claimed half their supplies. Brave didn't mean reckless. She'd earned her stripes plotting courses through asteroid storms back on Mars. Reroute auxiliary power to the forward emitters. Lena, plot a slingshot around that big wreck at bearing 247. We used their mass to mask our signature. It wasn't genius, it was grit, the kind humans had forged in the fires of their own world's upheavals. The aliens with their gleaming fleets and treaties wouldn't understand, they debated while worlds burned. The ship lurched as the first drone latched onto the hull, its acidic tendrils eating through the outer plating. Alarms blared, red lights painting the bridge in bloody hues. Jax cursed, slamming a fist on the override. Got it, emitters firing. A pulse of improvised EMP rippled out, not the clean tech of Alliance weapons, but a jury-rigged burst from salvaged parts, laced with human stubbornness. The drone spasmed and fell away, tumbling into the debris like a discarded toy. But more came, a tightening noose of glinting forms. Lena's hands flew over her panel. Slingshot in 10. Hold on. The Endeavor banked hard, gravity tugging at their bodies as it whipped around the colossal derelict. For a moment, the swarm hesitated, confused by the sudden vector shift. Ilara allowed herself a thin smile, ingenuity over firepower, every time. Then the backfire hit. The wreck's unstable core, disturbed by their pass, erupted in a cascade of plasma. It clipped the ship's flank, shearing off a sensor array in a shower of sparks. Consoles sparked, and Jax dove under his station, yelling about fried circuits. Lena gripped her harness, eyes wide. We're blind on starboard, swarms closing fast. Ilara unstrapped, moving to Jax's side. Talk to me, what can we patch? Her voice cut through the chaos, calm authority born of too many close calls. He emerged, toolkit in hand, already splicing wires. Give me 2 minutes. We vent the cargo bay, use the exhaust as a decoy flare. Risky, it had cost them the last of their emergency rations, floating out into the void. But the alternative was the swarm's embrace, dissolving the hull and everyone in it. As the drones bore down, their sensors pinging like hungry predators, Ilara hit the comms. All hands brace. We're making our own luck here. The ship shuddered, vents hissing open, spewing a brilliant plume that mimicked a distress beacon. The swarm veered, drawn to the false heat, colliding in a frenzy of self-destruction amid the debris. Silence fell, broken only by the creak of settling metal. Jax slumped back, grinning faintly through the exhaustion. That worked. Lena exhaled, plotting their escape vector. But Ilara's gaze lingered on the view screen, where the swarm's remnants drifted like ash. The cost gnawed at her, the rations gone, the ship limping, and the core world still deaf to their calls. Humanity turned away but not broken. Not yet. The cosmos would learn, one hard one dodge at a time. The dim hum of the auxiliary engines vibrated through the deck plating, a constant reminder that the Endeavour was running on fumes. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles whitening as she scanned the tactical display. The nebula ahead swirled like spilled ink, its tendrils of gas and dust masking whatever lay beyond, possibly salvation, possibly a trap. "Status on the scanners, Ruiz?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Lieutenant Marco Ruiz hunched over his console, fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Sweat beaded on his forehead, catching the blue glow of the screens. "Still jammed, Cap. That cosmic storm we hit scrubbed our arrays clean. We're blind as a bat in here." He shot a glance at Dr. Lyra Voss, the xenobiologist strapped into the jump seat beside him. Her furred ears twitched, a telltale sign of her unease, the Krellian equivalent of a human frown. Lyra's claws tapped rhythmically on her datapad, her cautious nature warring with the urgency of their plight. "The nebula's interference isn't natural," she said softly, her translated voice carrying a melodic lilt. "Readings suggest artificial modulation. Someone, or something, is hiding in there." She paused, her golden eyes flicking to Elena. "We should hold position. Probe first." Elena shook her head, the scar along her jaw tightening with the motion. Brave didn't mean reckless, but turning back wasn't an option. The Galactic Concordance had denied their colony petition weeks ago, labeling humanity's expansion unstable after that skirmish with the Vorath Raiders. Now, with the Endeavour low on antimatter and life support flickering, this uncharted sector was their last shot at a foothold. "No time for caution, document. The crew's counting on us. Plot a course through the thinnest edge, slow and steady." Marco nodded, his witty grin flashing despite the tension. "Aye, Cap, threading the needle it is. Just don't blame me if we come out the other side as cosmic confetti." He punched in the coordinates, and the ship shuddered forward, inertial dampeners straining against the gravitational eddies. As they plunged deeper, the view screen filled with swirling purples and electric blues, the nebula's heart pulsing like a living thing. Alarms blared suddenly, red light strobing across the bridge. "Incoming signatures." Marco yelled, his hands blurring over the controls. 3, no 5, hostile vectors. "They're fast," Cap. Vorath scouts by the look of their energy wakes. Elena's heart raced, but she kept her tone even. "Evasive maneuvers. Arm the point defenses." The Endeavour banked hard, thrusters firing in staccato bursts. A plasma bolt streaked past, close enough to rattle the hull. Lyra unstrapped, moving to the auxiliary station with fluid grace. "Their weapons are tuned to our shield's frequency," she warned, her voice tight. "One direct hit and we're venting atmosphere." The first skirmish unfolded in a blur of fire and shadow. Marco's quick thinking diverted power to the forward arrays, buying them seconds as the ship twisted through a gas cloud. Elena watched the readouts, calculating odds. The Vorath were relentless, their needle-like fighters darting in like hornets, but humans had grit on their side. "Ruiz, reroute the engineering reserves to the disruptor coils. Make M regret waking up today." He complied without hesitation, sweat flying as he bypassed safeties. The Endeavour's main gun hummed to life, a makeshift jury rig born of human ingenuity. It lanced out, not with raw power but with a modulated pulse that scrambled the lead fighter's NAV systems. The alien craft spun wildly, slamming into a nebula tendril and erupting in silent flame. But victory was fleeting. Another bolt clipped their starboard nacelle, and the ship listed, sparks erupting from a console. Lyra yelped as shrapnel grazed her arm, dark blood welling through her fur. "Shields at 20%, Marco reported, his grin gone. "We're not getting out without a fight." Elena stood, adrenaline sharpening her focus. The Concordance had turned them away, dismissed humanity as impulsive upstarts. But here in the void's unforgiving embrace they'd carve their place, or die trying. "All hands, battle stations. Let's show these bugs what grit looks like." The bridge crew moved as one, their camaraderie a shield against the encroaching dark. Elena gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles whitening against the cold metal. The stars outside the viewport stretched into infinite black, but it was the anomaly ahead that clawed at her focus, a swirling vortex of crimson energy, pulsing like a wound in space itself. The ship's alarms had quieted hours ago, but the hum of the engines felt wrong, strained, as if the Odyssey were holding its breath. "Captain, the readings are stabilizing," Jack said from the console behind her, his voice carrying that familiar edge of sarcasm masked as reassurance. He wiped grease from his hands on his jumpsuit, leaving dark streaks like war paint. "But if we push closer, we're gambling with the hull integrity. That thing's magnetic field is a beast, could strip us bare before we blink." She turned, meeting his eyes. Jack's was the cautious one, always calculating odds, but today his wit had dulled under the weight of what they'd already lost. 2 crew members gone in the last skirmish with the Vexery scouts, their shuttle vaporized in a flash of plasma. Elena nodded, forcing steadiness into her reply. "We don't have a choice. The Federation turned us away at the border, said humanity's reckless expansion was a threat to the peace. If we don't map this anomaly and prove it's a gateway they missed, we'll be drifting exiles forever." Jack snorted, leaning back in his chair. "Peace? Those tentacled bureaucrats wouldn't know peace if it bit them. Remember the envoy's transmission? Return to your cradle world, primates. As if we're the ones stirring the pot." He tapped the screen, pulling up a holographic projection of the vortex. Tendrils of red light snaked outward, probing like fingers. "My plan was to loop around, use the debris field for cover. But the engines," a shudder rocked the ship, cutting him off. Lights flickered, and the viewport stars blurred for a heartbeat. Elena braced herself, heart pounding. "Report." "Field's pulling us in," Jack barked, fingers flying over controls. "Compensators failing. I told you we needed that upgrade back at Orion Station." He didn't look up, but she heard the frustration, the undercurrent of fear he rarely showed. She crossed to his station, scanning the diagnostics. The Vexery had hit them hard during the border incident, disabled their auxiliary power to force a retreat. Now, with the Federation's blockade sealing human space, repairs were makeshift at best. Elena's mind raced. Brave didn't mean foolish, it meant adapting. Reroute from life support. Give the engines a boost. We'll slingshot past the edge, grab the data on the fly. Jax paused, his eyes narrowing. Life support? That's playing with fire, Cap. We're already low on oxy after the breach. Do it, she said, her voice low but firm. No speeches, just the choice hanging between them. He hesitated, then nodded, his fingers initiating the transfer. The ship groaned in response, a deep metallic whine echoing through the corridors. As the Odyssey surged forward, the vortex loomed larger, its crimson glow bathing the deck in bloody light. Elena watched the sensors spike, energy signatures unlike anything in their databases, hinting at stable wormholes, untapped routes that could redefine human reach. But the pull intensified, yanking at the hull like an invisible tide. Jax, how long? She asked, gripping the console as another tremor hit. 10 minutes to optimal scan range. If we hold. His voice cracked slightly on the last word, but he kept working, rerouting power with grim efficiency. In the dim light, Elena caught a glimpse of their reflection in the viewport, 2 humans against the void, battered but unbowed. The Federation had dismissed them, labeled their ingenuity a liability. But here, in the face of the unknown, that same grit was their edge. Suddenly, the alarms blared again. Incoming signatures, Jax shouted. Vexery drones, 3 of them vectoring from the far side. Elena's jaw tightened. The rival group hadn't given up. They'd been shadowing since the border, waiting for a moment like this. The anomaly wasn't just a challenge, it was bait, and they'd walked right into the trap. Arm the point defenses, she ordered, sliding into the co-pilot seat. And keep us on course. We're not turning back now. Jax grinned faintly, the wit flickering back. Aye, Cap. Let's show these cosmic busybodies what humanity's made of. The ship dove toward the vortex's maw, drones closing fast, lasers streaking through the dark. Ilara's hands steadied on the controls, the stakes sharpening with every second. One wrong move, and the cosmos would claim another piece of their defiance. The dim glow of the emergency lights cast long shadows across the engineering bay, where sparks occasionally danced from exposed conduits like fireflies in a storm. Captain Elena Vasquez wiped sweat from her brow, her calloused hands steady as she twisted a makeshift clamp around a ruptured fuel line. The ship, the Odyssey, groaned under the strain of its failing engines, the hum of auxiliary power the only thing keeping them from drifting into the void. Her crew, 3 souls she'd handpicked for their grit, huddled nearby, faces smeared with grease and resolve. "Pressure's holding at 30%, murmured Jax, the wiry navigator, his voice a low rumble as he monitored the console. He was the cautious one, always double-checking trajectories, but now his fingers flew across the keys with uncharacteristic urgency. A bead of sweat traced the scar on his cheek, a remnant from a boarding skirmish years back. "If we don't reroute the plasma flow soon, we'll lose the core entirely." Elena nodded, not taking her eyes off the clamp. She'd seen worse, pirate ambushes in the belt, hull breaches from micrometeorites, but this was different. The alien envoy sabotage, that subtle virus they'd slipped into the NAV systems during the summit, had turned their diplomatic vessel into a ticking bomb. Humanity had come to the Galactic Concord with open hands, offering tech trades and alliances, only to be turned away like beggars at a feast. "The stars aren't for primitives," the envoy had sneered through its translator, its multifaceted eyes gleaming with condescension. Now those same stars were closing in, the Odyssey caught in the gravitational pull of a rogue asteroid field the Concorde had conveniently forgotten to mention. Lyra, the engineer with a wit sharp as her multi-tool, snorted from her perch on a crate. "Primitives? Tell that to the quantum drive we jury-rigged from scrap. If these tentacled snobs think we're done, they've got another thing coming." She was the fire in the team, her dark braids tied back, tattoos of circuit patterns inking her arms like war paint. But even she paused, glancing at the viewport where jagged rocks loomed, silent threats in the black. The first plan had backfired spectacularly. Elena's idea to vent the virus through the auxiliary vents had only spread it faster, frying half the relays and dropping their shields to critical. Now, with oxygen recyclers straining and the asteroid field tightening its grip, they had one shot left. A manual override on the core, bypassing the infected systems entirely. It meant exposing themselves to raw plasma, a risk that could fry nerves or worse. "Jax, plot the slingshot trajectory," Elena ordered, her voice calm steel. "Lyra, you're with me on the core axis. We do this fast or we don't do it at all. No speeches, no hesitation, just the rhythm of survival." Jax's eyes met hers, a flicker of doubt, but he tapped the coordinates without a word. Lyra grinned, though it didn't reach her eyes, and hefted her toolkit. As they pried open the core hatch, heat blasted out like a dragon's breath, singeing Elena's sleeves. Alarms wailed, a cacophony underscoring the stakes. One wrong move, and the Odyssey would shatter against the rocks, a forgotten footnote in the Concorde's logs. But humanity didn't yield to dismissal. They adapted, they fought, they endured. Elena reached in, fingers brushing the pulsing heart of the ship, and whispered a silent vow. The cosmos would learn, one ignition at a time. Elena gripped the console edge as the shuttle lurched, the view screen flickering with static from the nebula's electromagnetic storm. Marco's fingers flew across the auxiliary panel, rerouting power from life support to shields just to keep them from frying. "Come on, you stubborn beast," he muttered, his voice tight but laced with that familiar sarcasm. "We've patched worse than this on a bar bet." Zeth huddled in the co-pilot's seat, his iridescent scales dulling under the red emergency lights. The alien's multifaceted eyes darted between readouts, his cautious nature screaming in every hesitant breath. This was a mistake. The Council's archives warned of these rifts, unstable folds in space-time. We should have waited for reinforcements. Elena shot him a glance, her jaw set. Brave didn't mean reckless, but turning back now would doom the outpost they just evacuated. The cosmic entity's tendrils, those writhing voids of antimatter, had already swallowed Tijri colonies. Humanity's rejection from the Galactic Accord had left them outsiders, but it also meant no red tape. They were here because someone had to be. Reinforcements are light years away, Zeth. And if we bail, those tendrils hit the core worlds next. Your people included. The shuttle shuddered again, a proximity alarm blaring as a rift yawned open ahead, its edges crackling like fractured glass. Elena's plan had been simple: skim the nebula's outer layer, use the interference to mask their approach to the entity's anchor point, a derelict station orbiting a dead star. Marco had jury-rigged a phase modulator to punch through the interference without drawing attention. But simple never lasted. "Modulator's overheating," Marco said, sweat beading on his brow. He slammed a fist on the panel, but the readings only worsened. "It's feedback from the rifts. We're lighting up like a supernova." Zeth's claws clicked against his harness. "I told you, these anomalies amplify any energy signature. We're exposed." Elena yanked the yoke, veering hard to port. The shuttle groaned, inertial dampeners whining. Through the haze she spotted the first pursuers. Sleek Accord interceptors, their hulls gleaming with official insignia. The Council must have detected their unauthorized incursion. No mercy for primitives meddling in cosmic threats. "They're hailing us," Zeth said, his voice edging toward panic. "Demanding we stand down." "Ignore it." Elena's pulse thrummed in her ears. The Accord had turned humanity away at the gates, calling them unproven and volatile. Now they wanted to claim the glory of stopping the entity? Not on her watch. Marco patched in a burst from the modulator, trying to spoof their signature as nebula debris. For a heartbeat it worked. The interceptors banked away, scanning empty space. Elena allowed herself a tight smile. "See? Human grit." But the victory soured fast. The modulator sparked, then died with a pop, smoke curling from the vents. Alarms screamed anew, structural integrity failing. A rift had clipped them, shearing off a stabilizer fin. The shuttle spun lazily, controls sluggish. "Brace." Elena barked, fighting the stick. Zeth clutched his seat, murmuring ancient prayers from his world's lore. Marco, ever the wit, quipped, "Next time let's steal a better ship." The lead interceptor looped back, weapons hot. A warning shot lanced past, close enough to rattle the hull. Elena's mind raced: evade into the rifts? Risk the entity detecting them early? Or surrender and let the Accord bungle the mission? No. She punched the thrusters, diving toward the nebula's heart. The view screen filled with swirling chaos, rifts twisting like living veins. "Marco, get me auxiliary propulsion." Zeth scanned for a stable path. As they plunged deeper, the entity's distant hum vibrated through the deck, a low, hungry thrum that set Elena's teeth on edge. The plan had backfired spectacularly, turning hunters into the hunted. But in the grit of it she felt the spark of adaptation. Humanity's place wasn't given. It was carved out, one desperate maneuver at a time. The shuttle bucked as another rift swallowed their tail, the interceptors closing in. Elena's hands steadied on the controls. This wasn't over. Not yet. The dim hum of the ship's engines vibrated through the deck plating, a constant reminder that they were still alive, still moving. Captain Elena Reyes gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles whitening as she stared at the view screen. The nebula ahead swirled like a living thing, its tendrils of gas and plasma reaching out as if to drag them in. Jax, her chief engineer, hunched over the console beside her, his fingers flying across the holographic interface, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. "We can't keep dodging like this," Elena said, her voice steady but edged with the fatigue of days without real sleep. The alien fleet, those sleek, predatory vessels from the Zorith Collective, had been herding them for hours, forcing the battered human freighter deeper into the nebula's heart. What started as a simple salvage run had turned into a trap when the Zorith claimed the wreck as their territory, firing warning shots that cracked the hull and fried half their sensors. Jax glanced up, his dark eyes sharp behind grease-streaked glasses. The bafflers holding, but not for long. That last pulse from their scanners lit us up like a flare. If we don't find a way to mask our signature completely, they'll pinpoint us in minutes. He was the cautious one, always calculating odds, but today his caution bordered on grim resolve. No witty quips this time. The stakes had silenced even his usual sarcasm. Elena nodded, forcing her mind to focus. The plan had been straightforward. Use the nebula's interference to slip past the Zorith patrols and reach the salvage site, an ancient derelict said to hold tech that could tip the balance in humanity's favor against the galaxy's dismissive elites. But the nebula proved more treacherous than scans suggested, electromagnetic storms that scrambled NAV systems and eroded shields. Their first attempt to deploy decoy drones had backfired spectacularly. The Zorith had anticipated it, using their superior sensors to trace the signals back and amplify the storm, nearly ripping the ship apart. Options? She asked, though she already dreaded the answer. Jax pulled up a schematic, the hologram flickering under interference. We vent plasma from the auxiliary thrusters, create a false trail that mimics our ion signature. It'll buy us time to circle back toward the edge. But it'll strain the core. One wrong burst and we overload. She met his gaze. Do it. Better than waiting to be boarded. Elena trusted Jax's ingenuity. He jury-rigged half the ship's defenses from scrap during their exile from the core worlds. Humanity had been turned away by the Galactic Concordance years ago, deemed too reckless, too primitive for membership. Now, out here on the fringes, they proved their worth in survival alone. As Jax initiated the sequence, the ship shuddered. Alarms blared softly in the background, a chorus of warnings ignored. Elena activated the comms, patching through to their lone passenger, Dr. Lyra Voss, the xenobiologist who joined them for this run. Lyra, status on the artifact scans? The doctor's voice crackled back, strained. Interference is worsening. I can confirm the derelict's core is intact, some kind of energy matrix unlike anything Zorith tech. But if we don't get closer soon, the nebula will corrupt the data. Elena clenched her jaw. Lyra was the wild card. Brilliant, idealistic, a defector from the Concordance who believed humans could bridge the gap with the stars. Her enthusiasm had gotten them into this mess, convincing Elena the salvage was worth the risk. Now, with the Zorith closing in, that idealism felt like a liability. The view screen flared as the plasma vent deployed, a shimmering wake blooming behind them like a comet's tail. For a moment, it worked. The pursuing ships veered, their formations fracturing as they chased the ghost signal. Elena allowed herself a breath. Good work. Helm, plot that loop Jax mapped. Tighten it up, we're not out yet. But as the freighter banked hard, a new alert pierced the cabin. Jax swore under his breath. Captain, their lead ship just adapted. They're modulating their fields to filter the decoy. It's pulling the storm right toward us. The nebula responded with fury. Bolts of plasma arced across the void, slamming into the shields with hammer blows. The ship groaned, lights flickering as power diverted to defenses. Elena's chair lurched, she braced against the G-forces, tasting blood from a bitten lip. Evasive. Jax, reroute everything to forward baffles. He was already moving, diving under the console to yank open a panel, sparks flying as he hot-wired relays. On it, but this'll blind our sensors. We're flying dark. The first direct hit rocked them, hull metal screaming in protest. Lyra's voice burst over comms, panicked but determined. Elena, the derelict signal is spiking. It's reacting to the storm, might be a way to harness it, turn the tide. Elena keyed the mic. How? Unknown. But if we can dock. Another jolt cut her off. The view screen shattered into static, the Zorith silhouettes looming larger. Elena's mind raced. The original plan was crumbling, the nebula closing like a fist. They needed something cleverer, a human twist the aliens wouldn't expect. Jax, can we sync our core to that signal Lyra's picking up? Use the storm against them? His head popped up, eyes widening. Risky as hell. It could fry us too. Do it, she said, the word a command born of grit. In the stars, humanity didn't beg for a place. They carved it out, one desperate adaptation at a time. The ship plunged deeper, the plasma storm raging around them like in the dim glow of the auxiliary lights flickered across the bridge of the Endeavor, casting long shadows that danced like specters over the consoles. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The alien vessel loomed on the view screen, its hull a jagged mosaic of crystalline facets that refracted the starlight into blinding prisms. Status on the shields? She barked, her voice steady despite the knot twisting in her gut. Lieutenant Kai Ren, ever the cautious one, hunched over his engineering panel, fingers flying across the holographic display. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his responses came quick and precise. Holding at 40%, Captain. That last pulse from their weapon array nearly breached us. If they fire again. He trailed off, glancing at the third figure in the room, Zorith, the avian diplomat from the coalition, whose feathers ruffled with unease. Zorith's beak clicked softly, a nervous tick. He had been their reluctant guide through this sector, a wiry bird-like being with eyes like polished obsidian. "The Krell do not negotiate," he said, his translated voice a melodic warble undercut by tension. "They see your species as interlopers, turned away from the core worlds for good reason. But this blockade, it's not just pride. There's something in the nebula they're guarding." Elena nodded, her mind racing through the fragments of intel they'd pieced together over the past weeks. The Krell, ancient and isolationist, had sealed off the Epsilon Drift, a swirling mass of gas and debris that hid a power source capable of reshaping stellar alliances. Humanity's petition for observer status in the Galactic Concord had been laughed off, primitive mammals too reckless for the stars. Now, with the Endeavour stranded after their warp drive failed in the nebula's interference, the stakes had flipped. One wrong move and they'd be vapor. "Options?" Elena asked, turning to Kai. He straightened, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "We could vent plasma from the nacelles, disrupt their sensors long enough to slip past. Risky though. Might overload our core if the fields interact wrong." His eyes met hers, the weight of their small crew, barely 24 souls, hanging unspoken between them. Zorith shifted, his talons scraping the deck. "Or we hail them again. Appeal to the old protocols. The Concord's laws bind even the Krell in theory." Elena waited, the hum of the ship a constant undercurrent to her thoughts. They'd tried hailing 3 times already, each met with silence or warnings laced with static. But Zorith's idea sparked something, a human twist on alien rules. Kai prepped the vent. "Zorith, you're with me on comms. We'll make it personal." As Kai dove back into his work, Elena activated the channel. The view screen crackled, and for a moment the Krell ship's silhouette sharpened. "This is Captain Vasquez of the human vessel Endeavour. We're not here to conquer or claim. Our drive's damaged, we're blind in your drift. By Concord Article 17, you owe us safe passage or aid." Silence stretched, broken only by the nebula's ethereal glow bleeding through the viewport. Then, a response, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated the bulkheads. The translation lagged, but when it came it was laced with disdain. "Primitives beg entry where none is granted. Your kind turned away for weakness. Drift claims the unworthy." Elena's jaw tightened. "Weakness." They jury-rigged their ship through ion storms that shredded coalition scouts, bartered with pirate guilds using nothing but grit and bluff. "Weakness is hiding behind blockades while the galaxy burns. We've seen your logs, energy spikes from the nebula. Something's awakening in there and it's not staying put." The hum faltered just a fraction. Kai's voice cut in from the side. "Vents ready, Captain. Say the word." Zorith leaned forward, his feathers smoothing slightly. They hesitate. "Push." Elena did. "Let us through or help fix what your drift broke. Refuse and we'll find our own way, dragging your secrets with us." It was a gamble, threading human stubbornness through alien formality. The Krell ship's lights pulsed, and the view screen filled with schematics, a partial map of the nebula's hazards, laced with repair codes. No words, just data. Passage granted, but on their terms. Navigate the gauntlet alone, prove worth or perish. Elena exhaled, signaling Kai to stand down. "Plot the course." Zorith, decode that mess. As the avian diplomat nodded and bent to the console, she felt the ship's engines thrum back to life. They were in, but the real test loomed, the heart of the drift, where the cosmos's hidden fury waited, and humanity's place would be forged in fire or forgotten in void. The cost was already mounting, fuel reserves dipping low, crew morale fraying. One slip and the stars would claim them all. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Odyssey's failing engines vibrating through her bones. The view screen flickered with static, revealing glimpses of the swirling nebula that had ensnared them, a cosmic trap woven from ionized gases and gravitational eddies, courtesy of the Vorath Collective's latest diplomatic gift. Her crew, down to the essentials. Herself, the unflinching engineer Marco Reyes, and Dr. Lena Kaur, whose cautious mind had kept them alive this long. The fourth seat remained empty, a silent memorial to their lost navigator. Status, Marco? Ilara's voice cut through the red emergency lights, steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. Marco wiped grease from his brow, his wiry frame hunched over a jury-rigged console in the engineering alcove. Shields at 12%. The nebula's frying our relays faster than I can patch them. If we don't vent the plasma coils soon, we'll cook from the inside. His words were clipped, laced with that gritty determination that had earned him his stripes on the frontier runs. No panic, just facts. Humans didn't fold under pressure. They bent it to their will. Lena hovered nearby, her fingers dancing over a holographic display of the ship's schematics. Always the thinker, she adjusted her glasses, eyes narrowed in calculation. Venting will drop our thrust by half. The Vorath probe is closing ETA 15 minutes. They'll board us before we clear the eddies. Her tone held no accusation, only the weight of inevitability she'd fought to delay. Ilara nodded, her jaw set. The Vorath had turned humanity away at the Galactic Council, deeming them barbaric upstarts, unfit for the stars. Now this nebula was their petty revenge, a death sentence disguised as an accident. But Ilara hadn't clawed her way from the colony slums to captaincy by accepting fate. We improvise. Marco, can you route auxiliary power to the gravitic stabilizers? Force a micro-jump through the densest gas cloud. He paused, tools clattering as he straightened. A wry grin cracked his face, the kind that said he'd follow her into hell with a toolkit. Risky. Might shear the hull if the fields don't hold. But yeah, I can make it sing, for a bit. Do it. Ilara turned to Lena. Doc, sync the sensors to map the probe's weak points. If they come aboard, we need every edge. Lena's hesitation was brief, her cautious nature yielding to the fire in Ilara's eyes. On it. But Captain, if this fails. She trailed off, the unspoken cost hanging. The Odyssey was their last hope for proof of human worth, a vessel carrying data that could rewrite the Council's verdict. The ship groaned as Marco initiated the reroute, sparks flying from exposed panels. Ilara felt the deck tilt, the nebulous colors bleeding through the viewport like a predator's maw. Alarms blared, hull integrity dropping, Vorath signatures multiplying. 2 probes now hurting them deeper. Jump in 3, Marco called, his voice an anchor in the chaos. Hold on, human engineering, Vorath be damned. Ilara braced, heart pounding with the raw thrill of defiance. The stars twisted, and for a heartbeat the cosmos seemed to hold its breath. The dim glow of the emergency lights cast long shadows across the bridge of the Endeavor, turning the once pristine consoles into jagged silhouettes. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from fear, never from fear, but from the raw exertion of holding the ship together with sheer will. The hull groaned under the strain of the warp field's collapse, a sound like bones cracking in the void. Status on the core? She barked, her voice cutting through the hum of failing systems. Lieutenant Marcus Hale, the engineer, wiped grime from his face with a rag that had long since turned black. He hunched over a flickering holographic display, fingers dancing across the keys. Containment's at 47%, Captain. The singularity's pulling harder than we thought. If we don't vent the auxiliary plasma in the next 2 minutes, it'll tear us apart from the inside. Elena nodded, her mind racing through the options they'd already burned. The alien armada, those sleek, iridescent vessels of the Coalition, had forced their hand, their blockade turning the rescue mission into a desperate sprint. What started as a simple aid run to the outer colonies had escalated when the Coalition deemed human expansion reckless, sealing off the sector with warnings that escalated to weapons fire. Now, with their ship limping and the colony's beacon fading, the cost was etched in every face around her. Dr. Lila Chin, the xenobiologist, leaned against a bulkhead, her tablet clutched like a lifeline. Her usual calm demeanor cracked, eyes wide as she monitored the external scans. They're closing in. 3 cruisers vectoring for intercept. If we drop out of warp here, we're sitting ducks. We don't have a choice, Elena said, standing to her full height. The ship shuddered again, a violent lurch that sent tools skittering across the deck. Marcus cursed under his breath, rerouting power with frantic efficiency. He'd always been the steady one, the man who fixed what others broke, his humor a shield against the stars' indifference. But now even he looked frayed, dark circles under his eyes from nights without sleep. Elena crossed to the viewport, where the streaking stars blurred into a maelstrom. The Coalition's tech outclassed theirs in every simulation. Energy shields that laughed at human torpedoes, drives that bent space like paper. Yet here they were, humans against the galaxy's self-appointed guardians, fighting not for conquest but survival. The colony below carried 5,000 souls, families who'd trusted Earth's promise of a new home. Turning back wasn't an option, it never had been. "Prepare the vent sequence," she ordered. "Marcus, isolate the plasma relays. Lila, get me a firing solution on their lead ship, make it count." As the alarms wailed, Marcus initiated the purge. A deep rumble built in the ship's core, vibrating through the floor plates. Elena felt it in her chest, a pulse like a heartbeat faltering. The Endeavor was no warship, she was an explorer built for discovery, not this. But humans adapted. They always did. The warp bubble collapsed with a thunderous snap, hurling the ship back into real space. Stars snapped into focus, sharp and unforgiving. The colony world loomed ahead, a blue-green marble scarred by orbital debris. And closing fast, the Coalition cruisers, their hulls shimmering like oil on water. Lila's voice rose over the din, "Firing now." Railguns spat projectiles, silent in the vacuum but alive with kinetic fury. The lead cruiser veered, but not before a hit grazed its flank, sparking against the shield in a bloom of plasma. "They're returning fire," Marcus shouted. Energy lanced across the void, slamming into the Endeavor's battered hull. Alarms blared, hull breach in engineering, secondary systems offline. Elena braced as the deck tilted, her mind flashing to the faces back on Earth, the ones who'd sent them out here with hope in their eyes. "Hold her steady," she growled, slamming her fist on the console to stabilize the inertial dampeners. The ship righted, but the cost showed. Sparks flew from overhead panels and the air grew thick with the acrid tang of burning circuits. In that moment, as the second cruiser loomed larger, Elena saw the pattern in their formation. A flaw, a hesitation born of their rigid protocols. Humans didn't fight by rules, they improvised. "Marcus, reroute everything to forward thrusters. Lila, sync the comms array to broadcast on their frequency. Flood it with the colony's distress signal, make them think we're surrendering." It was a gamble, buying seconds in a fight measured in heartbeats. Marcus nodded, his hands a blur. Lila hesitated only a fraction before complying, her fingers trembling but precise. The signal burst out, a raw plea laced with static, coordinates, vitals, the human desperation they couldn't ignore. The Coalition ships faltered, their advance slowing as algorithms parsed the data. It wasn't mercy, it was their own code, programmed to prioritize sentient preservation. Elena seized the window. "Full burn. Get us into Atmo." The Endeavor surged forward, engines screaming as they dove toward the planet. The cruisers trailed, but the ploy had worked. Their formation broke, buying precious distance. Yet as they pierced the upper atmosphere, friction heating the hull to a cherry glow, Elena knew the victory was Pyrrhic. Scans showed the colony's defenses crumbling under automated drones left by the blockade. And behind them the Armada regrouped. Touchdown was rough, the ship skimming a mountain ridge before settling in a plume of dust. Elena was first out the airlock, rifle in the stars hung like scattered embers in the void, indifferent witnesses to the Armada's retreat. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The bridge of the Endurance hummed with the low thrum of cooling engines, a sound that felt like the ship's own exhausted sigh. Her crew moved with quiet purpose, Lyra patching the final sensor arrays, Tomas calibrating the jump drive, and Jax, ever the skeptic, double-checking the hull integrity logs. They had won, but victory tasted like ash in her mouth. "Status report," Ilara said, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. The external challenge had been the Coalition's blockade. A web of interdiction fields and automated drones designed to starve humanity out of the sector. Resource shortages had bitten deep, fuel cells depleted, medbays running on vapors, but they turned it with grit and a jury-rigged EMP burst from scavenged parts. Now the coalition fleet limped away, their vaunted tech humbled by human improvisation. Lyra glanced up from her console, her cautious eyes narrowing. All systems green, Cap. But the Vanguard took a hit. Life support's compromised on decks 4 through 6. We need to dock for repairs before the next wave hits. Ilara nodded, masking her worry. The Vanguard carried half their colonists, families who'd bet everything on this frontier claim. Losing them wasn't an option. Helm, plot a course to rendezvous. Jax, get a team prepped for EVA. We're not leaving anyone behind. Jax snorted, wiping grease from his hands on his jumpsuit. Aye, fearless leader. Though if the coalition pulls another stunt, we'll be welding patches in zero-G while dodging lasers. Fun times. The ship shuddered as it accelerated, the viewport filling with the debris field from the battle, a glittering graveyard of shattered hulls and drifting wreckage. Ilara remembered the early plan: slip through the blockade under cloak, negotiate from strength. It had backfired spectacularly when their stealth emitter fried, exposing them to the full fury of the drones. They'd adapted on the fly, using the Endurance S-mining lasers to carve a path, but the cost was etched in every scar on the bulkheads. As they closed on the Vanguard, alarms blared softly, a coalition scout ship cloaked and trailing them. Ilara's mind raced. No time for heroics, they were running on fumes. Tomas, divert auxiliary power to the point defense grid. Lyra, hail them. Make it clear we're not playing. The comms crackled to life, and a synthetic voice responded, laced with the coalition's artificial arrogance. Human vessel, stand down. Your incursion ends here. Surrender your claims or face annihilation. Ilara leaned into the pickup, her tone earnest, laced with the weight of what they'd already endured. We've bled for this ground, envoy. Your blockade failed because we don't quit. Turn back or learn why the stars fear our kind. Silence stretched, broken only by the ping of incoming scans. Then, a new transmission, garbled, urgent, from the coalition's core worlds. Whispers of unrest, their empires fracturing under the strain of overreach. Humanity's stand had rippled outward, inspiring rogue factions, exposing cracks in their unity. The scout ship veered off, its engines flaring as it vanished into the black. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Ilara held up a hand. Save it. We've got work. Docking clamps engaged with a resonant clang, and the team spilled into the Vanguard's corridors. Air hissed from ruptured seals, carrying the metallic tang of fear. Ilara led the way, her flashlight cutting through the dim emergency lighting. A child huddled in an alcove, wide-eyed and trembling, her parents nearby with makeshift bandages. You're safe now, Ilara murmured, kneeling to their level. The girl's brave spark flickered back as Jax handed over a ration pack, his witty grin disarming the tension. Eat up, kid. Universe just got a whole lot bigger for us. Hours blurred into a symphony of repairs, welding torches sparking, voices overlapping in urgent harmony. Lyra's steady hands rerouted power lines, Tomas bantered through diagnostics, coaxing life back into failing systems. By dawn's cycle, the Vanguard hummed anew, its colonists emerging to clasp hands with the Endurance crew, strangers no more, bound by shared fire. But as they set course for the colony site, Ilara stood at the viewport, watching the coalition's remnants fade. The cosmos had turned humanity away once, deeming them too wild, too unpredictable. Now, with outposts secured and alliances fracturing among the stars, the lesson lingered: grit outlasted empires. Ships would come again, hungrier, but the humans would be ready, scarred, yes, but unbreakable. In the quiet aftermath, Ilara allowed herself a small smile. The stars weren't indifferent anymore. They watched, wary as humanity claimed its place.